What's up, badass Black Desert Mobile fans? In this video, I'm going to go over the top 10 classes for 4 different topics, as well as the top 10 classes in all of Black Desert Mobile currently for the global servers. With the recent release of the Archer and Fletcher, as well as some rebalances and an overdue tier list, I figured it was about time I update this for you guys and gals. As always with tier lists, these are subjective, and the opinions in this video are strictly mine, as well as a few people who did help me with these lists. Therefore, if you feel a class should be on the list anywhere, or a list should be different somehow, feel free to leave your opinion and comments in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to smash that like button, and if you're new, think about subscribing, as these videos do take a lot of time to compile the data and give you the best information possible. Before we get into the tier list, I do want to shout out a couple people and guilds that helped me acquire this information. The first one is Mandalorian from the Stark Naked Guild on the Kaya server. This gentleman helped me compile most of this data. He also reached out to a few Stark members and asked their opinion. People like Megalodon, who is a top CP player on the Kaya server, does also have his own YouTube channel, which I will link in the description down below. Also, players like Nugan, who I have known since pretty much day one of the servers, all the servers coming out, global launch, back in December 11th of 2019. I also want to shout out my own guild, Hero from the Kaya server as well, helping offer some solid input to where they feel a class should be ranked. Thank you again to those people who did help me with these various lists and input. And with that being said, let's dive right in. Up first, we have the top 10 arena class tier list. This was a pretty unanimous decision with most of these classes. Maybe you could swap one or two. The first one we do have is the Void Knight. The pros for the Void Knight is it can stay in a permanent super armor, iframe, or forward guard if you play the class correctly. The second one is the Hashashin, which is one of the top classes for most of these. He can stay in super armor and a linger permanently. He does have high damage, and one skill bypasses a forward guard. The third one is the Fletcher. This Fletcher does have a high skill ceiling, but has the most tools out of any classes out currently. The fourth class we have is the Archer, and the Archer is one of the hardest hitting classes in the arena. The fifth class just got a rebalance, and that rebalance actually added an enrage buff to their rage buff, which wasn't out. It was on the Korea servers, and we finally did receive it. And that increases their heal, and that new buff means they have a permanent over haste in arenas and in most situations. Next, we have the Raven. This class got reworked and has strong arena ability, fast casting skills with range, and good super armor. Next, the seventh is the Lancer. Also had a recent rework, 2 of them actually. All arena skills were heavily buffed, and the second hardest hitting PvP percent combo comes from the Lancer. The 8th class, might be surprised that it's so low for some of you guys, is the Archmage, and that's because they did get some nerfs recently. They cannot chain invincibility anymore, and they're easier to CC, which is why they did come down a little bit. The 9th class we have is the Striker. It has the longest skill combo and highest damage combo if you could get caught by them. Forward guard is best of any class with only a 2-second cooldown time. Last but not least for these is coming in at 10th, and this one just squeaked in there because it just did get a rebalance in the recent update, and that's the Lotus. They're a top arena class. They can compete with any class when handled correctly. They do have a mid to high skill cap ceiling, though. That rounds out the top 10 classes for the arenas, so that is all 10. And again, we have Void Knight number 1, Hashashin number 2, Fletcher comes in at 3rd, Archer at 4th, Berserker at 5th, Raven at 6th, Lancer at 7th, Archmage at 8th, Striker at 9th, and Lotus at 10th. The next list we have is for the Black Sun. So this is the top 10 list for the Black Sun. Coming in at number 1 is the Phantasma. And this list is a little different than for the arenas, as the Phantasma wasn't even on the arena top 10 list. And the reason that they're number 1 is because they have some of the best chase capabilities, as well as escape versatility. So whether you're trying to chase or run away, they're great. They also deal damage well, and have some of the best skills for sniping people at range. Coming in at number 2, again, the Hashashin, which was number 2 for the arenas as well. Deals PvP damage, damage over time, which still kills players after their totems pop. Also has a lot of iframes, super armor, big damage, and the linger. Coming in at number 3 is the Berserker. Almost as good as the Phantasma at chasing and movement skills. Deals a lot of AoE damage. Has a heal. Downside is without CP, they do die quickly with no iframe abilities. They are great in group situations or 1v1. Coming in at number 5 is the Void Knight, the number 1 class for arenas. The Void Knight has the best chase capability and escape capabilities, a little bit better than Phantasma. Only downside is if you're lower CP, it does not deal damage well. It is more of a sniper class as it cannot trade super armor skills with most other classes. Strictly, you 1v1 class, so with the Void Knight, you typically want to try to find people by themselves, not groups of people. Coming in at number 6 is one of the newest classes, the Fletcher. Not one of the better classes for the Black Sun, but they are a top 10 class. They're good at fighting and has survivability, but cannot escape or chase as good as the above classes. Its escape is actually good going directly backwards, but not forwards. Coming in at number 7 is the Invoker. The Invoker has good damage and movement skills. Lots of forward guard for trading damage. They also are pretty good at chasing, surprisingly. Number 8 is the Titan, which did get a rework recently with an extra grab. They do have those extra grabs, decent movement skills after the rework, making the Titan really good at the Black Sun. Its run is the farthest in the game. Number 9 is the Striker. Similar to the Titan, the Striker can do really well in a support role and has decent chase capability. Its chase is actually right behind the Void Knight. Has a movement buff almost all the time, plus one skill that can gap close further than any other skill. Number 10 is the Archmage. Still a strong Black Sun class, but a lot of its abilities are now nerfed, which makes it harder to stay in combat like it used to. The last class for the Black Sun, I did skip one there, I apologize. The 10th class is the Raven. It's a strong Black Sun class after the recent rework. Has some ranged attacks. Lacks full mobility of some of the above classes. They are a great class, and they do round out the top 10 for the Black Sun. So again, that is the top 10 for the Black Sun. Coming in at number 1, the Phantasma. Hashashin number 2. Berserker number 3. Void Knight number 4. Fletcher number 5. Invoker number 6. Titan number 7. Striker number 8. Archmage at 9th. And the Raven at 10th. Next, we're going to talk about Guild vs. Guild in Siege Wars. And this list, again, is going to be slightly different than the previous 2 lists because it really depends on what that class is strong with. And the list depends on whether the classes, they're on attack or defense. Some classes are really good at defense, like the Archmage, and some classes are really good at hitting a crystal, like Fletchers and Berserkers. Coming in at number 1 is the Archmage. It's still a very versatile class in Siege Wars, even after the nerf, and they do better on defense. Fletcher, best attacking class, can shoot crystals from behind barricades, which is really OP. So the Fletcher is very strong for Guild vs. Guild in Siege Wars. Coming in at number 3, taken out, it was number 2 for the Black Sun and number 2 for the arenas is the Hashashin. Hashashin is an incredibly versatile class with the super armors, forward guards, iframes, the linger effect that it has. Just a crazy class overall. Very mobile class as well. Lancer comes in at number 4. Has some of the highest damage multiplier with skills. Iframes is an AoE damage skill. Multiple high burst skills. And the rework made this class great for attacking or defending. Coming in at number 5 is the Archer, one of the newest classes to Blackdesertmobile. Very powerful class on defense when movement is not needed. Ability to attack crystals isn't very good, so this is more of a defensive class and not a high mobility class. Coming in at number 6 is the Berserker. For a lot of the same reasons they were such a good class in the Black Sun and the Arena, they do drop a little bit on the Guild vs. Guild and Siege Wars, but for the same reasons they're so good in those 2 areas, they are also good in Guild vs. Guild and Siege Wars. Great AoE, they do have that new recent buff with the Rage Bar, plus they have that extra heal with their level 70 and Rage skill, so just great overall class. Coming in at number 7, this might surprise some of you guys that it's not higher on the list and that it wasn't in the Black Sun and the regular arenas, and that's the Nova. The defensive capabilities for this class is super strong with its grabs and the wall that it offers. The damage is very high per skill with good AoE, and if you use this class correctly, you can actually block out complete guilds from getting to your crystals, or, if it's siege, if get into the walls, whatever the case may be. Number 8 is the Invoker. Long range, good AoE, and permanent super armor in siege, good for constant DPS. Number 9, again, we have the Raven squeaking in there. That might surprise some of you guys. The Raven has high burst and mobility. It's great for closing the gap, covering some distance, getting into that crystal or the walls. And lastly is the Phantasma coming in at number 10 for Guild vs. Guild and Siege Wars. One of the highest mobility classes out there. Decent all-around class with solid ranged abilities. Can attack from afar. Really good at sniping class. And it has high mobility. That rounds out the top 10 for the Guild vs. Guild and Siege Wars. Again, number 1, Archmage. 2, Fletcher. 3, Hashashin. 4, Lancer. 5, Archer. 6, Berserker. 7, Nova. 8, Invoker. 9 Raven, 10 Phantasma, and again, remember, some of these classes are ranked higher because they are better at defending or attacking, like the Archmage and the Nova are higher on the list because they are good at defending. The last list I have is for the Hadum Farming. I did test all of these classes. I did also seek out some other, people as far as their testing to see what their thoughts and opinions are for these were. And it was pretty unanimous. Aside from the Archer, all of the classes were pretty similar and possibly could have been swapped depending on the skill build or the level of the skills. And one thing that I want to note here is this is dependent on the level of the skill. So most of the skills that I tested were at level 1. And if you're maining the class, you're going to have level 5, 6, 7, 8, level 9 on some of those skills, which means you're going to farm a little faster. So these numbers might vary, and some classes might vary as far as their ranking. This is just the list that I came up with. I think you guys can all agree that number 1 on this list is the Archer. I got him at about 285 kills per minute. He does have some crazy, AoE skills that just keep him far above every other class. The second class I have is actually his brother, the Fletcher, that comes at 263, so about 20 to 25 kills per minute slower than the Archer, so that's how much better the Archer is. After that is the Hashashin coming in at 262 kills per minute. Then I have the Archmage at 257, the Berserker at 257, so those two tie from the testing that I've done, and that is with the recent update to the Rage Bar, which gives them more haste, which means you do their skills a lot quicker. After that, we have the Huntress at 255, the Invoker at 255. So again, if those skills are leveled up, they might swap or increase their kills per minute. The Raven, again, at 253. This class is just surprisingly does very well with that rebalance they had a month or two ago. Coming in at number 9 is the Nova at 252. And surprise, surprise, coming in at number 10 is the Primrose at 250. That rounds out the Hadum Farming top 10 tier list. Again, Archer number 1. Fletcher 2, Hashashin 3, Archmage 4, Berserker 5, Huntress 6, Invoker 7, Raven 8, Nova 9, and Primrose 10. Now that we've gone over the top 10 tier list for the arenas, Black Sun, Guild vs. Guild and Siege, and Hadum, we have a good idea of what classes you expect to see in the top 10 overall. And what I did is I literally combined the list of all of the other tier lists that I had, and we figured out which ones were in the top 10 based off of their rank for the others. And the Fletcher is number 1 overall for the tier list, with closely followed up by the Hashashin. Hashashin is borderline number 1, and it does depend on the scenario and the situation. The Hashashin actually does better in some situations over the Fletcher with the linger and the iframes and whatnot. Coming in number 3 is the Berserker. The Berserker did rank a little bit lower in most situations over the Hashashin and Fletcher, but they were top 5 to top 3 for most of those, so they do end up overall in the top 3, and they are the only melee class in the top 5. So the Berserker with that new rage buff increasing their haste definitely saw a bump in their ranking. Number 4 is the Archer. The Archer does have high damage output skills, but isn't the most mobile class, so they did fall down a little bit. They are still top 5 class. They are still a great class to use, so the Archer is number 4. Coming in at number 5, used to be one of the reigning top tier SS number 1 class for a couple months, and they did get dethroned, especially with the nerfs that they have, and that is the Archmage at number 5. Number 6 is that Void Knight. And, some of the reason that Void Knight's up there is with their versatility and mobility and escapability. With that Dark Mist skill, they can really cover some distance and not be targeted. It's untargetable. You can't hit them. So they are in the top 6, and they did rank highly in most of the PvP situations. Number 7 is the Lancer. And, that class scored pretty well in a lot of the situations as well. So they did come in at number 7. Rounding out is number 8, the Phantasma. I know some people would argue that Phantasma is a top 5 class. Again, that is your preference. You can leave that in the comments down below. They did get number 8. The Invoker comes in at number 9, so the sister rather, to the Archmage. The Archmage was 5th, the Invoker was 9th. So they are number 9. They did score well in some of the situations, depending on which it was. And lastly, we have the Raven. So that Raven with that new rework just scores very well in a lot of the situations, and they did end up getting top 10 overall. I know some of you guys might be wondering where classes like, the Windwalker were at. I saw some of the other tier lists where the Windwalker was top 5, class even, top 10. And the discussions I had with some of the people is that, maybe it's because there's just not a lot of people playing the Windwalker, so they don't have a good idea of seeing them and playing against them. And then the few Windwalkers they have played against just weren't good enough to give them a good scope and idea of where some of those classes rank. So the Windwalker, I feel like some of you guys might be like, oh, the Windwalker should be on that list, or even the Nova should be on that list, but the Nova is not and the Windwalker are not. But again, if you feel like they should, drop that in the comments down below and let me know. That does cover all the tier lists, the top 10 for arenas, Black Sun, Guild vs. Guild, and Siege War, Hadum Farming, and the overall tier list. So just because a class isn't on the top 10 overall list, maybe they scored better on the top 10 for Black Sun or for Arena or one of those other ones, and you still like that class, then rock them. This is just a tier list, and tier lists are, again, subjective. Just because they're on my list doesn't mean they're not going to be on somebody else's list or your list. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out. I greatly appreciate it. And with that being said, I will see you next time.